Let's face it, the world of music, especially metal, can be pretty hostile at times, and there can be this sense of gatekeeping and barriers to entry exist, whether it's someone's gender, their creed, or their race, and things that really should not matter, yet these barriers still exist. Fortunately, though, there's bands that come along every now and then that absolutely smash these barriers and shatter those glass ceilings, and I think Nervosa are a brilliant example of that. Hailing from Brazil, they proved that not only can women be successful in metal, they can come along and absolutely dominate. They played all over the world, the likes of Hellfest, Wacken, Bloodstock here in the UK, and it's quite remarkable considering that they're from Brazil, very far away geographically from the big markets of the USA, Scandinavia, the UK, France, and yeah, they built a legion of fans across the world. They burst onto the scene in 2011, and 15 years later, they are about to release Slave Machine, their sixth album in total, and it follows up the 2023 release Jailbreak. Now, I did discover the band around about 2016, and it was nearly 10 years later, in October 2025, when I finally got to see them live, and they came to Europe with the likes of Obituary, Testament, and Destruction, and they toured the UK and Europe as part of the Thrash the Titans tour. I got to see the Manchester set, and I was a bit disappointed in some ways because they only got a 30-minute opening set. I felt like they deserved so much more than that, but at the same time, they made the most of that short set. They arrived, they raised hell, and left people wanting more. Now, I did also find that show quite interesting because it was like an unofficial announcement for Slave Machine, the new album, which they announced that they would be releasing in April 2026. But also, I found it interesting because they operated as a four-piece that night, with the front woman and lead guitarist Preaker, holding down both duties and again operating as a four-piece. But on the press release for Slave Machine, I noticed that Preaker would just be the lead vocalist and relieving herself of guitar duties, and the band would be operating as a five-piece once again. So yeah, I was quite interested in how that would manifest, how that would shape their sound, and if I could expect anything different from previous releases. So yeah, I got a chance to listen to Slave Machine before it was released to the world. So these are some of my preliminary and early thoughts on the album. The album kicks off with Impending Doom, and it starts off quite intimidating, quite austere, with the tribal drums and the Gregorian chants. And it feels like the start of an occult ritual, and yeah, again, it's quite intimidating, austere at times. But then, after about a minute, the guitars come in, and just an unrelenting thrash assault. And I can imagine this causing absolute chaos when they play it live. And I think it'd be a good one to open the set to, maybe. And also, we got all this aggression in the verses, but when they get to the choruses, it's really anthemic. And yeah, it's something I'm seeing a lot in the world of metal lately, where people want these big hooks and want these parts that they can remember. These big hooks. And I think Nervosa are bringing that with Impending Doom's chorus. Also, there's an absolute blistering lead guitar solo, so yeah, it's the full package really. This song, and it comes in at about 4.5 minutes, one of the longer songs on the album, and that seems not really significant now, but as we'll see later in this review, it is actually quite significant. Now, Nervosa, they've always had this kind of thrash death crossover sound. It's always been a feature of their sound, and it definitely comes across in Slave Machine. Yet there's some songs that I think they explore like an early metalcore feel. The early 2000s, bands like All That Remains, Unearth, even the likes of Killswitch Engage. The sound of those bands are definitely incorporated into Nervosa's compositions. The songs like Ghost Notes, Crawl for Your Pride, they blend this really cool opulent melody with those really crushing, tight, chugging rhythm sections, like that kind of stuff. Also, one of the songs, Hate, it really reminds me of Killswitch Engage, Break the Silence. It's very similar to that. And yeah, Hate is one of my favourite songs on the album. If nothing else, it's that amazing guitar opening. And I do wonder if, Rika going to, being solely the lead vocalist now, if that's freed up someone else to explore more complex guitar passages like that. I used to play bass in a band, used to play bass and sing, and that's really complicated to try and do both. Playing guitar and singing is really complicated. So I do wonder if, you know, again, they've also had more license to explore more complicated passages. Now that Preaker's not trying to do two things at once. On the subject of Preeka, she's been an absolute force of nature behind the mic for many years with Nervosa, and Slave Machine, she gets to show off her vocals again, and every single song she's consistently fierce and aggressive, and I've seen her play live, at that show in October 2025 here in Manchester, and I just know it's not studio magic, it really is just who she is as a vocalist. It's raw and powerful, and I think there's one song in particular on this album, You Are Not a Hero, that sums up her vocals the best. You know, some parts when it's just drums, bass, and her vocals, and no guitars to drown her out, really. Not that she gets drowned out, but in these sections, she really is under the microscope, and you can feel the absolute venom and visceral intensity of her voice there. She's an absolute powerhouse, and yeah, I think she sets standards for vocals of a vocalist in the death metal genre, really. I spoke about Impending Doom earlier in the video and how that's one of the more expansive compositions on the album, and it comes in about 4.5 minutes, again with that tribalistic opening to the song. And I think the album comes across, Slave Machine comes across in two separate sections, really, in two halves. I feel like the first half of the album, it has these big moments and there's big hooks in the album. And yeah, some of the songs have real identity and backbones. But then the last few songs of the album, they come across as, I want to say, a bit copy and paste, which sounds a bit derogatory, but most of them are coming in about 3 minute bursts, and it comes across as a bit of a double edged sword because nowadays people have shorter attention spans. They want things quick, fast, and efficient. And if people get bored nowadays, listening to the band on streaming services, they'll just go to the next song. And nice 3 minute package of a song. It means that it's a bit more appealing to playlist curators, and you can get on the radio a lot easier. At the same time, though, it does feel like they're recycling riffs and ideas a bit too quickly, and there's no real. I haven't got these big anthems or big hooks in the songs, and yeah, it comes across as again two separate sections of the album, two halves of the album. The first half brilliant, but the second half a bit too repetitive. And yeah, they get lost in the shuffle. There's no real identity, which is a shame, really, because the first half of the album starts off so brilliantly, starts off so well, but after Hate, it does go a bit downhill. I think does lose a bit of momentum. But yes, Slave Machine by Nervosa, it's a pretty solid album. It represents everything brilliant about the band, and yeah, it feels like quite a mature, sophisticated effort. And I'm just hoping that they come to Europe again, come to the UK again in 2026 or 2027. I only got to see them for 30 minutes in October 2025. Hopefully, they'll do a headline show playing 50, 60, 70 minutes. That'll be fantastic.